of last month's minutes. Matt, seconded by John. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. And we'll start with Frank. I guess you got a short agenda.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda is a discussion on the court project generator options. On page 3, you'll find some different proposals.
You want to, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll just, I mentioned this to committee, I think, last month. One of the things that early on was one of the decision points was how to handle the additional court space with backup generator. As you know, this building is carried by a single backup generator that covers the entire building load, so that if power goes off, the building can still operate. Early on, there were discussions about whether we wanted to replace this generator with a larger one that would carry the municipal center plus the additional court wing, or provide an additional generator just for that court wing. What's currently in the design plans is a new additional generator, smaller one, just for the court wing. The other factor that was considered and wanted to bring to committee is the human services building generator, that during the design, final design decisions and construction phase of that project, the decision was made to use an existing generator from the old annex building and relocate that over to the human services building, rather than provide a adequately sized generator that would carry the full building load. So we've had some issues in the past, although it's been a few years since we've lost power for any significant amount of time over there. In the past, if we lose power, the building can't operate. We have emergency lighting and I think one elevator, right, Frank?
No.
No elevator.
Neither elevator. The elevators will go to the closest floor and dump.
So it's essentially, it's emergency lighting, the stairwell lighting, and that's it.
And a third of the heating.
Enough to keep the building, from freezing if it's wintertime, or give a little bit of cooling, but not enough to operate the building. So one of the concepts that I discussed with Clark Patterson and their electrical engineer is taking and instead of buying a new generator for the court wing, a new smaller generator for the court wing, to relocate the human services building generator over to the court wing, and which would generate a savings of about $75,000 for the court project, and then replace the human services generator, which we've been talking for a while now about an estimate of about $200,000 total, because there is wiring and transfer switches involved. So what's different now versus what we had discussed in the past about the human services building is now we have, if we replace that generator, we have a use for it right over to the new court wing, and that saves that $75,000 out of the court project. So that's really the big difference, that we see this opportunity now, and wanted to bring it to committee to see if the committee wanted to consider that, or if we wanted to move ahead with separate systems and leave the human services building as it is now.
Questions? Craig?
That generator will be sufficient to carry the whole courthouse addition?
Yes.
I just have a kind of a side question. Our IT department is located in the Human Services building, correct? And didn't we have an issue with the servers, the cooling for the servers at one point, not too, maybe a year ago or something along those lines? If we lose power over there, say it's the summer, it's extremely hot, is there a danger to our servers and computer systems if they're not kept adequate? Like, currently, would they be kept cool enough? Or?
Currently, they are on the generator circuit.
Okay.
So the issue before wasn't power; it was the cooling unit in the server room went. So we have portable units now that we can put in, but power wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
The way it is right now.
I was just a little concerned about that.
The big concern now is Board of Elections has a concern that if we lose power, we can't operate
Can't get the machines
elevator,
out of the
can't
basement.
get the machines out. That's
Ron?
Is, when you say you can't get the machines, these are the portable things, the election, why couldn't we just haul them upstairs? I mean, why does, it's not like the old-fashioned, heavy, voting machines. I'm not, this is not an argument, it just, you made the statement, I'm wondering why why you,
I think it's calibration, concerns on Board of Elections' part. I believe we could probably get them out of the basement. I
Right.
don't know
manually.
how well they would operate once we get them out of the basement. They're pretty fragile.
Okay.
It's not the type of thing that you can just tip back and roll up the stairs, you'd have to physically carry them, or you do damage to them.
Okay.
I know that's part of the discussion too, Ron, the storage, but the bigger part was, when we have power outages, they were generally rainy, icy days, and we had to shut the building down and release the employees. So there's a cost loss of losing that efficiency of that day's work, and then we were putting our employees out on bad roads in the worst conditions to go home, and, that was part of the discussion of why we didn't have a generator that would operate the building so we could continue on.
Well, I mean, this is a nice option, $75,000 to get, use the old generator, put a new one over there to make sure the elevators work, and, it's a win-win for us. We knew we were gonna spend some money anyway.
Ron, you had something?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that the first question is what's the program, what's the event that you're planning for in terms of the building? I mean, if what you're looking for is something that maintains the building at full operational capability, then that's one thing. If your program is that, in terms of a significant outage, you need to do A, B, C, then that's another thing, right? In other words, it's a different sizing is different, everything is different, even source of fuel is different. It seems to me that, now the generator that is there presently is capable of running, certain systems, right? It's on circuits, it's isolated to certain circuits. As far as hauling equipment, we could set it up to bring in a portable generator for that, if that was, or put it on a circuit. But I mean, it would seem to me that the first thing we need to know is what's the anticipated program, and then what you purchase, you would want to meet that program. That's how, am I incorrect in this?
No, I think based on the prior discussions that were years ago, that's exactly what the conversation was that the generator is really sized for egress and maintaining the building in a safe condition where it won't be damaged, but it's not designed as a full backup energy source like what we have in this building. So in fact, essentially the services shut down while the power is out. I just want to be clear on the cost. So the concept would be, again, to move that generator over to the new court space. It would save the court project $75,000. There's still the cost of $200,000 for the new generator and the new switch and the new wiring in the human services building. So it's still net increase in cost of $125,000 approximately. And the other thing that the committee should be aware of is the court project is bonded, and it's bonded specific to the court expansion. And I think from prior discussions with the treasurer's office, and Mike's here, he can chime in. But my understanding from talking with the treasurer's office and some of the bond counsel is that bond has to be specific to the court project. So I think it would be a stretch to be able to include those additional costs in human services under that court expansion bond. So we would be looking at, if the committee wants to pursue that, we would need a new funding source for the $125,000. Well, we need the $200,000 over there, and then we'd save $75,000 on the bond, the amount bonded. Does that make sense to everybody? It's just, again, the reason I thought it was critical, and I talked with Chairman Gerard about it, because now is the unique situation that there's an opportunity here. If we proceed as planned, the court project will get built, we'll have a new generator over there feeding the court project. We haven't solved anything on Human Services Building. In the future, if you wanna do that, then we still have that $200,000 project to upgrade the Human Services Building generator. It's just at that point, we don't have an immediate savings for the use of the old generator. We would be likely holding it or auctioning it, you know, and trying to recoup some of it, but I don't think we would recoup that full $75,000 in value that we would derive right now.
Claudia?
Thank you. When you're saying 200,000, is that this second number?
Yes.
Are these two supposed to be
Yeah,
combined or no?
yeah, and these are, I should caveat these a little bit. We had done prior estimates for 200,000 for the work, and I think those are legitimate numbers. Clark Patterson looked at it again. These are their current budgetary estimates, but they have done almost no engineering into this. In other words, it's part of the court project and their engineering for that. They weren't contracted to do a detailed engineer estimate and a detailed design for what it would take to replace that generator. So I'm throwing, yes, that's the 180, but I'm talking 200,000 because the next step would be, if the committee wants to pursue this, the next step would be to authorize some additional work for Clark Patterson to do a detailed design and estimate for replacing the generator.
So it's the 180 or more like 200,000 plus the 92,000, but that 92,000 would come out of the court budget?
The court project would cover the court generator. Yes, and that's already included in that budget. So we already anticipated as part of the court project that we were gonna have a need for a new generator, and that's gonna be a full-size backup generator for the court expansion.
Jeff, we haven't gone to bid yet on the, court.
Right.
But we have a bond. Suppose the bid comes in way over our bond. I mean, you were talking about trying to move dollars here and there. I mean, what would happen then? Yeah.
Okay, we bonded just enough to get Jeff through the next 10 to 12 months, because we did not have a bid, and we did not know an exact cost. The anticipation is that sometime next spring, hopefully, while the rates are still down, we'll have an idea of exactly what it's gonna cost for the addition and for the renovations, and we'll bond the rest of it then.
Okay. And when you do bond the rest of it, you can't throw the, generator from, human resource or,
Jeff, along the lines of, we originally talked about this generator here that facilitates this building, moving that over to the Human Resource Building. The assumption was that it was capable of running everything we need over there. And then replacing this with a new one that would do everything. That would seem to me would be bondable, am I speaking out of turn, for the project?
Oh, but I'd like to get an exact opinion on that one. It sounds more reasonable, but, I think I'd wanna get an opinion from bond counsel on that, just to make sure, but it sounds good, yes.
Because if that in fact is the case, would that be what the committee would rather pursue because of bonding, et cetera, is take this one here, move it to the Human Resource, put a new one here to facilitate the whole building? Yeah.
That was one of the things that I discussed with Clark Patterson as well, and their engineers thought that when you get to a point where you're running, the main connections into the buildings, that they felt that it was the cost of that, other than the advantage of being able to bond it, the cost would be significantly increased because of the length of run, and it may require some transformers and a lot of work in the basement to even get the electrical connections from here over to the other end of the building. Where the generator is located right now is basically central to the existing building, and so they had some concerns about that. Their other concern was whether during the construction phase a temporary generator would have to be provided to feed the building as everything is being transferred over and all of the work is done in the main electrical room here. They had some concerns about whether a temporary generator would be needed. our assumption early on was that that would be bondable, but we have not gotten a formal opinion of it.
Okay, Ryan, succinctly, I'm trying to do the option analysis in my head. What's the negative of, if the core project already has the appropriate generation and calculated and budgeted within the budget, why wouldn't we just move forward with that and leave the generator alone over at the other building? What's the drawback of doing that? Am I missing something here?
The only thing is that in prior years, there were concerns over leaving that generator there. And
Because of the elevator?
because of not being able to operate. I think there were some days where, and National Grid had some issues on that side of the grid for whatever reason. We haven't had any outages there in a few years, but I recall it kept coming up where we had one year where we had several afternoons where we lost power to that building and essentially had to shut down services because, you know, normal office functions weren't working as far as people being able to operate their computers, and the server still operated, but not the individual computers in all the office space. And that's really it's just a unique opportunity we have now, and that's why I thought we should at least consider it before we move forward.
And in a few years when we had those outages and it came back, why didn't we have the generator and why was it cut out and et cetera, it would be put into the budget and then it would be cut out of the budget. So that's why we're kind of grouping it. It doesn't have to be grouped. If the committee would like to just supply what we're doing with the courts and omit and stay the way we are with human resources, that's fine too, but this is a unique time and window to execute some sort of swap work or way to power the whole building. So I guess that's why we're discussing. Craig?
So, Jeff, it looks like on option one, for just the court generator, it's $146,000. Option two, along with 2B, comes to $272,000. So there's a net difference of $126,000. Then you add in for a little extra engineering and whatnot. And so given the choice between that, we would get fully functional under generator, 3 buildings, for about, say, $150,000 or so. Would that be about right?
Yeah, I think 125 to 150,000, somewhere in that range.
Okay. And then to follow up with Ron's question as well, is there a need to have the human services building fully operational by generator? Is there, for emergency services or anything, is that a necessary thing? So
The discussions have been when we built the building, then we had the power outage, then we had to release our people. Then the discussion was, why didn't we have a generator could power the building? Because it was cut out during the design phase by the core group. A lot of people didn't know that. So then, when we transitioned into the storage of the voting machines and they went down to the basement, that was another red flag. Well, the elevators won't run if, in fact, it happened on a voting day or when you set up. That would be a problem. So that was another issue. So the dialogue came forward, we really should not have cut that out of the humans. That was the feeling in the discussion when these things transpired. And that's why we tried to budget it, and then the budgets would cut it out. So that's why it's being brought back to the table today for the discussion again. So in other words, you could cut it all out, stay status quo, and power the new building. This winter, we could get an ice storm, go without power for 1, 2, 3, whatever, how many days. It means those people that work in that building cannot come to work. If that's all right with everybody, but we'll be revisiting the discussion if it goes past 4 or 5 days, et cetera, and we can't function.
I think what I'm wondering is, it's not, an event like that singularly isn't always power, it's communications. It's, in other words, how functional are you going to be when you lose those systems, right? In other words, you could power up that whole building and not necessarily be able to properly operate. You might not have any telephone. You might not have the ability to fax, you won't have the ability, you might be off the internet, I don't know. In other words, you might not even be able to get there, so I guess what I go back to, what is the event we're planning for? You can spend an awful lot of money planning for, having that building set like an island, lit up and whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's connected to the rest of the world. That's the part I'm struggling with here.
Okay, so the discussions have happened, but what is your purview? That to stay status quo and power the new addition and leave that the way it is? The Human Resources Building.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is the program that they have right now, I'm not sure I completely understand what the new generation, if the new generator is not gonna power up the whole building, but other elements of the program, maybe we have a more efficient way of doing that, is my point. And if your concern is on the elevators, for example, you put the elevators on their own circuit, you can take a portable generator and plug it in and run those elevators lickety-split, The question, I keep getting back to the question, is what is the program and why are we recommending for that program? Because I think that then design follows function, right? Then you have a design that has dollars attached to it and we can explain it. Right now, I'm sitting here, I'm not sure I have a complete feel for this program.
But if we had to take a vote today, what would be your vote?
I think I would vote no.
Okay.
I think I would vote to move forward with the court project and hold the status quo for the time being.
And Brian, would you want to chime in? I see your hands up, and I think Emergency Services, John.
Supervisor Leggett mentioned emergency service. I'll just throw my 2 cents in. I worked with emergency generators in my previous career a lot. I built a system that's over at the jail and oversaw that. That's a 1 megawatt generator. That's 100 kilowatts. That's a big system. But that system is designed to do what it's supposed to do. I will just offer my 2 cents. As far as the human service building goes, I think looking at the safety part of it and the drills that we have done over there, from your employees and for the clients that can be on the 2nd floor, when you do not have the elevators working, the cost of one person falling down the stairs and the legalities and what it's gonna cost you in the lawsuit will far exceed what you're gonna deal with as far as getting the right generator over there. Here's my suggestion. The more generators you add, the more maintenance costs you have, the more chances you have for failures. I personally don't think you should add a separate generator for the court. I think that should be on this building. Replace the one that's feeding this building right now, which runs well, with the right size to do this building, including the court, and then take that one over to the human services building. I really think that way there you're gonna have a system that is very stable and is gonna do the job that you want it to do. If you can restrict the number that you need, I realize that it's gonna be a little more money to buy the bigger generator. But in the long run, if you look at the installation costs, you're gonna replace the generator that's there. There's not gonna be a lot of site work. Yes, you have to pouring pad, new transfers, which I understand all that, and that's already included in the price. But that's a one-time deal. You're gonna do that, replace what you got. You're not changing all the wiring going through the building. We already know that it already included, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, that the power for the new port was gonna come from the
That's all
existing
custom.
building?
Just stick as far as the emergency,
Okay,
what the
I'm sorry.
issues are. The installation, all that, we can debate all that and the money-wise, but we're looking for what you think about an emergency in an ice storm condition, what your recommendation is.
The plans that we are doing currently and we already have as far as continuity of business, which we have for this building and the other buildings, the problem over there is you don't have a good plan for that. Because basically the building is not set up to operate without electricity. So that is a concern. If we have a big storm here, which we have had in the past, and we could be without power for 2 days, 3 days, that is a concern. Yes, Jim?
With that in mind, can any of these buildings act as safe harbor for the public during an emergency situation?
Certainly, and they're actually listed as that. That's the other problem. If you put in a plan somewhere that this could be a shelter.
So my question is, can't we get a FEMA grant for part of this? Because it would act as a safe harbor?
we've tried that. It doesn't work. There's other organizations that have tried that. Ron went through that up in Bolton. That's really hard.
Okay, well,
Okay, Jen.
No, it's a good idea,
Yeah.
certainly in years past, possible.
yeah.
That money is drying up big time.
Why don't we do this, Jeff, this decision doesn't have to be made today or the direction, can we bring it up again next month and we can digest it and talk,
Yeah.
talk and research, and if anybody else wants to really get a better grip, and
Yeah, I think our goal is to go to bid as soon as we get the, green light from, OCA. But even given that, we can do if we're still in the bidding process, we can do an amendment. If we've already awarded, it just becomes a change order, which in the scope of this large project, it might not be a significant change order if the committee wants to, pursue something after the bid is awarded and bid out.
just a second, and I would just encourage the committee, if you need to talk to people that are involved or other members, so that we're prepared for next month's meeting, then we could have a little better, more succinct discussion and move forward. Matt?
Yeah, I just wanna clarify real quick before we move on. Option 1A, that is covered in the bond, right, the cost of this, and the other two options are not. We would have to find alternate, additional sources of funding, is that correct?
Well, option 3, to expand this one here, I think would cause concern with Clark Patterson about the total project budget. The board authorized 16.5 million total. About, the first, I think we said 9 or 10 million could go to the first expansion, and then the rest of it is phases 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are all the renovations. And there's a lot of, those initial estimates were general, and they were, before a lot of the final engineering was done, and that engineering is continuing. I think Clark Patterson would be concerned with, okay, well, that little bit of change of going from a new generator over there to a big generator here is another, $150,000 that it all kind of chips away. Every one of those $150,000 changes starts to add up.
So the current status quo says that we're okay to handle the cost of option 1 right now, but not the other one.
Yes, right,
Okay.
and I'm not saying that wouldn't be absorbed into the overall, project budget. I'm just saying that, it would certainly be.
So we would have to find additional sources of funding for these.
That wouldn't necessarily occur until we get to probably 3 or 4 years down the line, when we're still renovating, hopscotching through the old court area, renovating, and we get to a point where we've got more renovations to do and we're out of money. So I wouldn't say that I would immediately say, yep, we've gotta extend the bond to 17 million. No, I wouldn't say that at all.
Ron? You have something?
No.
Okay, can we move on? Travis, I'm gonna call on you at the end of the meeting. Frank?
Second item is a easement for the town of Warrensburg for the sewer line. There's a diagram in your packet. Drafts on it.
The town of Warrensburg is advancing a sewer project, essentially, that takes their sewer main from Countryside all the way into town where the existing sewer is. And they've done that they're pursuing that through a grant through the county planning department. We've had some discussions with the town, and certainly, Chairman Garrity can chime in if he feels appropriate, but the intent would be, their current design is, there's a sewage pit at Countryside now that has some pumps in it, that actually pumps from the Countryside building up the hill a little bit into their leach field. They would like to use that same pit, change out the controls and the pumps, and that would be connected to their force main that would head all the way back to town. And the project was advanced with the intent of taking Countryside off of a septic system and onto a town sewer system. What we talked about, we met with the town and the town attorney. about, you know, long-term, how that would impact, the property and how to handle future maintenance. And it was resolved in that meeting that the town would need an easement to cover the sewage pit area, as well as the force main coming down through the county property down to the right-of-way. This is the first draft. I just got this from, the town engineers. And there's certainly, some discussions that would have to occur between Brian and Bob Hafner, who's representing the town, on final easement language, but we think this is a good first draft. This allows them a 20-foot right-of-way, or an easement, 20-foot easement over the force main itself for future repair and maintenance. It also gives them that box section, which is an area around the existing, ejection pit, because in the future, if for instance the county does not own Countryside or the rest of the parcel, and I know there's been prior discussions about that, they would be adding a generator to feed the pumps, generator and control house, and so that there's an easement area that it would allow for that future expansion and making it independent. The current plan is to simply feed power to those pumps directly from Countryside, and Countryside has its own backup generator that would operate those pumps in the meantime. The easement area just allows for a future expansion and upgrade if necessary.
Okay, could we get a motion to get it on the floor? Ron, seconded by Ron. Just a second, are you putting the motion on the floor? And Ron Conover seconded it, okay, discussion, Ron?
Just a question, does the county have to pay, sewer tax, or are they exempt?
We haven't talked about that. They don't pay water because they allow us to do the wells on the site. That's something we could talk in the future.
I mean, it's not an appreciable, it wouldn't be an
Not
appreciable.
for Countryside, no.
Claudia?
What was the basis for this move? What,
The county applied for grant funds to get Countryside off of a septic system onto a sewer system. That was the basis for it. We had tried through the CFA funding, and we're awarded the money to do this.
Any other questions?
so what, that'll be completely, sorry.
I thought you were done, I apologize,
No,
you
I
still have the
wasn't.
floor.
I just thought of something else. The cost of putting in the line will be covered by the,
Most of it's gonna be covered by the grant. It's a joint county, the county applied on, and we said that we would help do the work to get Countryside. We're also gonna get, Cornell Clocker extension off a septic. That is better for us as far as the well fields go, but for those who were here in 2006, right after we put the septic system in Countryside, we had issues with it. So they had to do some work on it, and so this will get those facilities onto a town-owned sewer system, and then if we ever did want to do any further work on Countryside to remove it or anything, it'll be on a town-owned sewer system. Makes it a more valuable piece of land, I guess that's what I'm saying. And we applied for money, and lo and behold, we were awarded the money, so we gotta get the work done this year. We didn't get enough money, but we're working on that. We're working on an extra funding source.
I believe there's, am I speaking out of turn, there's an aquifer there that you draw water, we're on our fourth well that provides water to
Right, and that was
so that's
another thing, well number 7, which we approved, a month ago. We did a test well, very good aquifer, and this will improve, the well site, although we're not in violations of any rules. This would just make it much better. And we're willing to let the county go into our system without much expense.
Any other questions?
I think it's great. I think let's get off those septic systems and,
Yeah, this is not a Queensbury Glens Falls deal. I'm not gonna get extra sales.
I didn't say that. I wasn't even going there. No, I think it,
No
I
sales
think
tax involved, huh?
excellent, and quite frankly, then the line is owned by the town sewer district, and
Well, eventually, yes.
it's their responsibility to,
Yeah.
maintain it going
Yeah.
forward, so.
Any other questions? I'll call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Last thing, Mr. Chairman, is, we've been looking at the former, Perkins Building, trash plan on Lower Warren Street.
Let me stop you there. It's not the trash plant, it has nothing to do with the
Well,
trash plant.
It used to be.
It's
Oh, I
not a
know.
trash plant.
Yeah.
It was a recycling center. It has nothing to do with the trash plant.
Okay.
It is the former MRF, which was a municipal recycling facility that was constructed and the county ran a recycling operation there until the early nineties. Not the trash plant.
You've been corrected, Frank.
Anyway,
Don't make that mistake.
we've talked as using part of that building as an option for emergency services to park their vehicles in. So on page 5 is a diagram of the building. And you see a dotted line drawn in on the building. That would be a fenced-in area, for their vehicles. Page 6 is a cost, just a rough cost estimate of renovations that we would need to do to secure the area and, make it separate from the, recycling operation. So we would have the fence, we would install an emergency generator for the large overhead doors. Lights and wiring, we would make a separate, entrance so that the building would be separate. We'd need to install 2 man doors and then, some parking lot work, patching, that type of thing. So total cost would be about $22,000.
Okay, questions? Evelyn?
Could somebody elaborate for me about the sprinkler system? I know there's a sprinkler system in the building, but what are we doing, we're putting a lot of expensive equipment in this building. Do we have like a Mahoney notify, I mean, who does it call if there's a fire in the building?
Currently, no one.
So,
It could be hooked up to notify. Mahoney monitors several.
I don't know that we have to use Mahoney, but I'm
Right.
just thinking if you have say it's the weekend and there's nobody in the building and there's these bales, I don't know if anybody's seen them, these bales go up to the ceiling, which have some concerns regarding sprinkler systems and the height of the bales, but that's probably a separate issue. But essentially, what I'm wondering is if, say the sprinklers freeze or something and the whole building is filling with water, it's not calling anybody, you come in on Monday and you've just flooded hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, the water damage cost alone. I'm just wondering, I'm not seeing on here where we had anything set up so somebody's getting notified if the sprinklers are going off or if there's a fire in the building.
Yeah.
That actually came up when, we met with Brian on the site and, talked through that, and then, he felt that he could add a panel, but it would require, a panel that he had said he could install, and then it would be an additional, monitoring cost if we wanna add it on to the Mahoney Notify system, which we have all the other buildings on. The sprinkler system has been inspected regularly, and I understand that, we had gone through and upgraded the sprinklers not too long ago in recent years. But right now, it is essentially a disconnected system in that it will operate, but it will not notify anyone. But my understanding from talking to Brian on site was it would need to be added on, but there would be a panel you could install.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Alia?
The last, photographs that I have seen of the site, I still haven't done a site visit, there was a lot of the recyclable material all over the place, and I don't see anything in here about an estimate for cleanup. Are we requiring the tenant to do that?
Yes,
Is there an
we've-
agreement in place?
Yes, the tenant's responsible for maintaining the facility. As I think we've talked about, they've been the only tenant, on site for some time, so there's been, I guess, no complaints, only that no one else has seen it. Now that we've been down to the site several times, I've talked with the owner of D&G about, doing their cleanup. He has made progress on that and is chipping away at cleaning up the site, in conjunction to operating his business, so they are responsible for that, and he seems responsive, at least right now. He's taken some measures, and he agreed that he's got more work to do.
Rachel?
Thank you. I know we've certainly had a lot of discussion about this over the years, and I appreciate Jeff and Brian working together and talking more about this option. But before we go forward, and we've heard from Jeff and facilities, but can we hear from Brian on what he thinks of this as an alternative?
Sure. Brian?
Chairman, I want to start off with, I'm not being antagonistic, I'm not being combative, I just want to explain to you what I see. Jeff and Frank had some excellent ideas, and I very much appreciate the thought and the work they put into this. It can work, it's not a problem, but I need to go on record telling you that this is not the end-all. This is not big enough, it'll work temporarily, but it is not the ultimate facility. And I'm glad to show you why. I did 2 diagrams of my equipment sitting inside that existing facility. The first picture you will see shows using 3 of the bays that are there now. That was ideal, and that was before I talked to Jeff and realized that all 3 bays were not available. The second plan shows trying to get all my equipment in to 2 bays. You will see that substantially crunches things together, but I'm not going to say it couldn't work. It could work. So I understand you're wanting to use this facility, and I appreciate the fact that you want to spend money on it, and I'm willing to give it a try, but I still, down the road, think that the county should put aside some money to put this building in the right spot, built the right way. When you take those vehicles and you put them end to end like that, and it's an emergency, and I need the one that's in the back, you know how long it's going to take to move all those trailers? Those aren't cars. Those are trailers. You have to hook onto them with a truck, pull them out, park them, back in, get the next one, pull that one out and get that one, and then keep right on going. Again, my concern is if one of these events happens, I don't have 10 people to send down there. There'll be 1 person going down there to get whatever we need, or 2 people if we need 2 pieces. But the bottom line is they'll be by themselves. They're not professional truck drivers. I do have a concern on trying to back all this stuff in such a tight space. Jeff brought up trying to put the units side by side. You can to a point, but then you're really, really restricted on the amount of room to be able to maneuver. These are 24-foot units. I mean, it doesn't back up like the snowmobile trailer. There's a lot of work involved in this, and I'm just trying to make it so that my people can do the job without major issues. So, again, I have no problem making this work. Again, I'll have to scrunch it down to only 1.5 bays, which is what Frank's picture with the fence shows. And I'll do my best to prioritize what's in there. Some of the equipment still will be outside or somewhere else.
Brian, what was the original request for square footage that you had for a new building?
6,000.
6,000? Because, I mean, what we have here is over 10,000.
Not usable.
6,000 will work for new, but 10,000 used won't work.
Where are you getting the 10,000 number from?
I get 140 times 72.
No, actually,
That's all 3 bays.
we're at, with the 1.5 bays, we're at 4750.
But this here, he says, doesn't work.
That's what he would like.
He said that worked.
That was, what was the original plan? And then,
We're down to half that.
But this would work?
yeah,
Because I misinterpreted you. I thought you put this out and then you have to move things around, et cetera.
you're still putting equipment end to end, which is difficult when you need the one that's in the back. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying when you're trying to do things in a hurry, you know, taking an hour to get to the piece that you want.
I get that, but I backing it in to me is, that's when you're coming back. Going out, you're pulling it forward, so I don't know why they couldn't be backed in and pulled out. But I don't mean to be argumentative. So this 10,000 would suit you, but when you scale it down, it becomes more of a problem.
Yes,
to
sir.
2 bays. Okay.
And
Right.
now it's not 2 bays, it's 1.5 bays. So, that's the issue there. Again, I appreciate the fact, and I'm willing to work with these guys, and, I'll do whatever I can to put the stuff in there, and go from there. I did have several other concerns with the building, lighting and stuff. Jeff and Frank have already dealt with that, and the generator, these are great things. Security is an issue for me, especially being remote like that. The same issue we have here. In reality, what the grants people told us, and I did not bring this up in an open meeting before because I didn't want to, this is all about security. To have that stuff outside, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment that can be accessed by cutting a $20 padlock. Those are the kinds of things, as long as I just want to make sure that we can keep things secure. Frank and Jeff talked about replacing a door and stuff, so I think we got that covered, but that is a concern that I have to deal with as far as the security. At least here we have cameras aimed at the equipment. That doesn't solve it if it's done in the middle of the night, but it is what it is. Other than that, the sprinkler system issue, I do have a concern from the fire side. The material they have stacked down there is stacked too high to the sprinklers, and it is a fire hazard. Again, that's not up to me. I just point that out as a concern that I think the county should think about as a landlord. These things should be considered. That's all I have, thank you, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Anything else, any questions for Brian? Matt?
Thank you. Just for my own information, what did, you started to say what the usable space in this current configuration was with the square footage? You need 6,000, but the usable space is what?
Well, again, you can't, when the building that I talked about was 6,000, but it was not all lengthwise. You can't equate square footage if you're putting stuff all in a long line and you can't do, it's not the same as being able to pull out of multiple doors, I guess the point. So square footage isn't necessarily the only thing that we have to think about. I understand what Mr. Gerard is saying, and he's right, but it still is less room, and it's much harder to access.
Well, that's why, specific to usable space, I understand that.
Thank you, that's the right term, usable space.
Brian, for instance, what are all of these trailers? I mean, what would you, just give us an idea of what, you know, the different uses of the trailers?
Which diagram are you on, Ron, the 2 or 3?
Well, whatever.
You got 3 rows or 2 rows?
2 rows.
2 rows. The 2 that are in the front, right at the face of the overhead doors, are the 2 that we want to keep connected. These are the ones that have to be first out. These are the ones that stay connected to their existing, they have their own tow vehicle. They have a vehicle that's assigned to tow them. These are the ones that have to get out. The first one is the MCI trailer. You see it says MCI tow. The MCI trailer, that is the one that has all our mass casualty equipment in it. We actually used it 2 weeks ago up in Minerva, set up a field hospital, ended up with 20 people going to the hospital. Unfortunately, no one was killed. That device, we need to get it out when we need it. I can't screw around and wait, you know. The one next to it is our hazmat system. That's the operation of the city of Glens Falls. We pay them to do that for us. They're our hazmat team. Again, same thing. If there's a hazmat incident, we need to get that equipment to where it needs to go. The Glens Falls firefighters would come here, grab the truck, and away they go. The one behind that is Ops 3. That is the trailer that has our ATV equipment in it. The one behind that is our generator trailer. That's the one that has generators that we could bring to a scene if there's a major power outage that has 6 10-kilowatt generators. Again, that's why it's in the back. Is that one that I need within seconds? No. We can take the time to get that one out. That's not a problem. MCU-1 is the command truck. On the other end, you see behind the hazmat truck is our generator. That's a 85 kilowatt trailer mounted generator. The one behind that is Ops 4, which is our sheltering trailer. This is the trailer that has the equipment capable of coming to the scene and setting up a shelter for 100 people. It's been required that we build this for our own use because the Red Cross is no longer doing it. This is something we've talked about in the past, and so we have used grant money to procure that trailer and the cots and the equipment that's inside. The one behind that is the cart trailer. That's the companion animal response trailer. This is a system that we were part of a grant of. This trailer is used for a shelter. It has all the stuff to set up a shelter for all the pets for those people that are in the shelter. I know it sounds foolish, but most people will not leave their home unless they can bring their pets. Shelters will not allow pets. So if you have a major shelter set up, you can bring this and it's set up outside, and there's cages for all the individual animals and different types of food and that is something we do in conjunction with Washington and Saratoga County. But that trailer would be used if we set up a shelter. Hence, that's why it's in the back.
Okay, yeah, what we have before the committee is that Brian's been trying to get this financed for 5 years, Brian? And generally, it starts off public safety, gets a warm welcome, gets passed down to facilities, that does some diligence, and then it ultimately goes to finance, where it has never received funding. The audit has triggered, or whoever they were, that they should not be stored outside for a litany of reasons. So, at one of our facilities meetings, Jeff said, we do have buildings that get them from the outside inside somewhere, temporarily, until we do a building up to the standards that's expected, etc. So what we have before us today is, if we want to move forward temporarily storing these out of the weather to get it in compliance or whatever of the auditors, we would need $22,000 to move forward. Evelyn?
I have a question. We're not storing them all though, right? Because we're using a bay and a half, so.
Yeah,
some of
we'll
them
have a
are-
couple vehicles that we'll
Do we
have
have
to
a-
leave out.
Do we have another
Not a
place?
big deal, you know, one of them, it would be one of the tow vehicles, one of the pickup trucks. We'll
Okay.
have to keep that here so that we can keep it, you know, out of the snow and everything, but again, we use that for other things as well. I have no problem taking that out. So, if you look at the one that shows 2 rows,
Yeah.
that already has 1 truck out of it.
I saw that, and I'm
If you
wondering.
take it to 1.5, that's gonna be a little bit more of a problem. Then we prioritize the trailers as to which ones can accept being left outside in the cold. And that would be the cart trailer and the sheltering trailer at least. Those do not have anything in them that would be temperature sensitive.
Got
As
it.
compared to the MCI trailer, that has stuff that is incredibly temperature sensitive. You set up a field hospital and you bring in them, we have oxygen tanks and a manifold so we can set this up. If you ask somebody to put on an oxygen mask and bring in air that's 20 degrees below 0, not a good plan. So, these are things that we think about.
John?
Yeah, we're talking 1.5 bays, 3 bays.
1.5 is what the one that Frank and Jeff have shown you.
All right, well, why not 3 bays?
Jeff?
We have, D&G Recycling is our existing tenant in there, and they have an amendment to use one of those bays, and then there's other floor space that they use for their operation.
So, they're rented out and only a bay and a half is not?
Right, and you know, frankly, over the years, we had prior tenants in there that had been in there with D&G. They moved out. Naturally, it's one big floor space. D&G has kind of, you know, used other areas to move material around. I've talked with D&G about getting back into their lease space and making it so that they're only in those areas that they're supposed to be in. And so they're accommodating that. They're able to operate.
So B&G,
D&G, yeah.
D?
D, yes. D is in dog.
D&G.
D&G.
Dog, or the, okay. So, they rent half of that space?
Right, a little bit
So-
more than half, but one of there's a few things I wanted to make sure that the committee's clear on as far as this estimate goes. I think we could explain a little better what each of these components are. And I also want to just highlight a few things that aren't included. The security fence is a 8-foot chain link fence with top and bottom rails. And we've included a vehicle gate that would pass through the smaller back door. If you look at the plan sheet of the building, for those of you that've been at the site, you recognize this is the far end of the building is the area we're talking about. The high bay doors are on this side of the drawing. There's 3 in a row, high bay doors. There's a smaller garage door in the rear here, that's really just an 8 foot by probably 7 or 8 foot high. About good for a passenger vehicle or a light truck, probably nothing with wide, mirrors on it. But we wanna put a larger gate in the fence line there in case we need to pass any equipment through into the D&G area in the future. And then we also included 1 4-foot, man gate in the fence line, for the under end of the fence line near the large door, so if someone needs to pass through for any reason, that would be there. That fence line is bolted to the floor, has all independent, rails, and then connects in with, in between basically the existing column line.
Jeff, I didn't understand what you said. 3 bays, we would be interfering with a lease that we have with D&G
Recycling, right.
So, then our choice is not to look at the 3 thing, it's just a 1.5, period.
They would, right, their existing lease includes use of one of those high bay doors.
Okay, so that's good.
Yep.
So why'd you even give me the thing with 3 bays?
I didn't give you that.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's approaching 10:26, and the next one is at 10:30, so we need to stick a fork in this. What is the purview? Do we want a motion on the floor to approve not to exceed $22,000 to execute this?
I'm gonna move that, Mr. Chairman.
And seconded by Matt. Any more discussion? Rachel?
I just briefly, because I can't believe the amount of time we've spent over this over 5 years, but even more recently, the equipment's been outside for quite a while now. What I hear is, it can work, it's not big enough, this is temporary. I'd prefer to do it the right way. We've already spent $6,000 on a plan that came back that we threw out. Evelyn's already identified additional costs, whether it be through an alarm system or cameras for security. I can't believe we can't find space at the airport, we can't find space at the sheriff's complex, we can't find anything that would work, to build onto an existing structure. And I'm not in favor of spending more money with not knowing whether or not is this resolution going to specifically say it's a temporary solution and that we're going to come back to this and do the right thing, to take care of these vehicles down the road, and if so, within what time frame. I just think sometimes we make resolutions and we don't go back to them, we don't
Okay.
fix it, so
Claudia?
I'm a no.
I'm gonna support this, and I think if we're gonna spend the money on it, we need to have our full 2 bays. Because this is a tenant who I believe we've been having a little bit of, I don't wanna say trouble, but, you know, they're having trouble. Financially, they're having trouble, so we need to assert control over our property. If they're out of their leased premises, they need to get out of their leased premises.
Okay.
Our premises, sorry, and remain in only what they're leasing.
Okay, any more discussion? Ron?
Well, I just wanna make sure I'm reading the drawing correctly. I thought I was, but basically, out of these 3 large overhead doors, we will have 2. Two is part of this program. So in other words, you're gonna follow this column structure down.
Right.
So the 1.5 comes because of this, the division down to this back. There's an overhead door back over here, but a much smaller overhead door.
Right.
So basically, Brian will have, access, through these 2 main overhead doors all the way back to, basically the end of the column structure.
That's the high bay
The
section
high
of
bay,
the building,
the high base
yes.
area,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, I got it. Skip over here. Okay, can we call the question, Matt?
I'll be one, really, I understand. I'm sure I know the answer to this, but is there a timeline as to when this isn't gonna become temporary and we're gonna move to the next phase? Because I'm just
No.
concerned with, there isn't a timeline. Concerned with using.
Although I'm
kind of
sure
money.
Brian will bring it back to the committees and it will go through the process and okay. Calling the question, all in favor? Do we show of hands? All opposed? So moved. Okay, does that complete our, I'm sorry, Travis, privilege of the floor,
Thank you. I just wanted to say that 3 reason why we had to go ahead and replace this generator,
Will you get near the mic? I apologize.
I don't know, is this on or?
That's a little better, yeah.
Yeah, 3 years ago, we heard that the reason we had to go ahead and replace this generator over here was because the voting machines were stuck down there. This Board of Elections, might have to get to it. I've got to think that is just an excuse, because if it's for real, I have a bigger question, and that is, why in 3 years haven't you addressed that problem? Because there are plenty of places here you would think that you'd be able to store these things, whether it be in a jail you can't use because there's some lead paint on it or whatever. Why haven't you done this in 3 years? It seems to me like it's only an excuse. And if this campus already has, we're told, outages once every few years. We already have 75% of the campus covered with emergency generation. Why in heaven's name, when you go ahead and say this office ought to be in this building and this office ought to be in this building, aren't you saying, is this office covered by emergency generation or not? Is this something that it needs to stay? Is it needs public access? All these things should be looked at. I can't imagine why you guys might consider spending another $200,000 of money you don't have, which has been pointed out by our chair many times, and talk about things like raising sales tax. You don't deserve any more taxes if you can't spend the money correctly, and I don't think you are, and that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, that concludes our facilities and buildings and grounds, and we'd like to move on to the airport, and we have Mr. Skimmerhorn here to make a presentation. Sorry to make your wait so long, Rich, but I know government is an arduous process.
I have some good problems. I need more space as well. I have another base tenant with a large plane that I need another hangar to accommodate. Because as you can see right now, since I started...
Would you be specific to what you have there now and what you're proposing? Because we have new members, and it would just be helpful.
I got the support of the board to take over to be the fixed base operator almost 7.5 years ago. I made a commitment to expand the airport. I can't get this thing to work across, but I think you can see it. But I made a commitment to expand the airport as we've been working to expand the runway. Where it says Rich Air on there's a number 1 on one building, number 2, number 3, number 4. Well, all those have been built. I've completed those. I have all full except for one. One of them is left empty for transients, which I get all the time where people come in needing overnight stays with their planes. I also did last year completed to the, well, I call it the north, but the long shoebox style buildings. Okay, yep, right there. Those are the T hangars that I just built. There's a 10 unit and a 9 unit. Those are all full. So right now, I just basically did a cutout and pasted. Number 5 would be proposed. I have a tenant for that one right now. They're taking delivery of a new airplane in November, which would take the whole hangar, and the hangars are 12,000 square feet. Number 6 would be an additional one, which I will build. What I'm asking for is the support to do what we've done in the past. I pay for everything. I just need a lease from the county. I will put these up, my expense, then, move the fence, re-fence them back in. That's my current need on the aviation side. The other side, if you want to flip over to the restaurant one, I didn't mark out the restaurant, but the restaurant is right there where Ross is pointing. That is completed. It's going to open in 2.5 weeks. When it opens, I promise it won't disappoint. I have some really good people that are running it for me. But already we have a space problem for dry storage for foods, a break room, additional areas for storage. We've already pre-booked, I think, 7 or 8 parties, and we haven't even opened yet. But the operator that I have, the general manager, Sally Longo, that's very well known by a lot of people. The executive chef that we've hired is very well known. So the reputation that they have is what's generating what is yet to come. Where I have, again, all I did, it's not to scale, but it's a 42 by 16 wide building. I was proposing to do a matching building, just like the restaurant I just built. It would be stucco, meet all the codes of today, be brand new, it'd be hooked up to the water and sewer, which is right there. The gas is right there as well. That would be an additional building, and Ross and Jeff had talked about it. And I think that's a spot that we said it's not interfering with aviation-related stuff, and it's a spot that probably wouldn't be a desirable spot to anybody else, but maybe or be with the restaurant. So I was hoping that I could get a support to do a standalone building there as well. You know, again, 40-year lease. I pay for all the expenses, hookups, no charge to the county. Any blacktop repairs, you know, going up to it or curbing or sidewalks, all paid by me again. No cost to the county, it would just be a lease again.
Okay, now, if we had Brian chime in on it and research the previous leases and bring us up to stuff on what we get for them, et cetera, and appraise the committee, next month would be okay to move forward?
Yes.
Is that what you're looking at?
That's fine, I'm just, here basically is just see if there's support for it to move forward before I spend more money. I do have Van Dusen and Steve surveying all of, well, my existing hangars have already been surveyed, but he's doing all of the land out here, just so I have a legal description of where we would put them, which you would need for the lease. But if I get the support of the board, again, I'll come back at a public hearing and,
Okay. Brian, you wanna chime in quickly, as procedurally, how this would move forward?
Mr. Lapper is gonna be representing you on this?
Yes, John would
I'll speak to John, we'll get, proposals, in theory, and I'll look at the leases that we have currently and make sure that we could do the same thing along the same lines if they need to be amended or new leases.
Okay, and before the next meeting, the committee would like the existing leases to review them, so you know what you're looking at comparatively to the two other leases that will be asked for. 3, excuse me. Anything else you want, John?
Well, just quick, Rich, I'm gonna assume that you're gonna re-fence around 5 and 6.
yes.
And pave in between the two for the, to accommodate the new air traffic.
Yes, all the expenses would be me. The only question that I would have, and it's come up in the past, the county, under grant or whatever, they blacktopped it for me. I've done all the site work, they just continue the blacktop. Now, Ross and I have had discussions, it's possible, I hope that's still the case.
Yeah, that was the arrangement under the previous lease agreements for the 4 hangars. This property in between, the ramp space in between the hangars, that's all part of the county property. We use that space for various events and for parking aircraft for the hangars and just generalized for the Balloon Festival as well. We did include in here, we have to cross this drainage ditch. We included that in the environmental assessment that we just recently completed, so we have a FONSI for crossing there. And in the past, the agreement was that Mr. Skimmerhorn did all the site work, all the preparations, all the utilities, everything, and so that all the county had to do was come in and put in the blacktop, and then it would remain under county control and operation, that ramp space. The leases would remain strictly to the buildings. Typically, what we've done in the past is a 5-foot buffer around all the buildings, and that's the ground lease for those structures.
And you did the blacktop to the north for the T hangars, which were completed a little over a year ago. The county did that, but I did all the prep work, the sub-base, all the drainage work, it was done by me. You guys just supplied the material for the paving and paved it, the county.
Okay.
Everything reverts.
And then you're looking for conceptually what the committee's opinion is what's the committee's purview, you in favor of moving forward with this? All in favor? Could I see a show of hands? Okay, and we'll get Brian working on it, and,
Yeah, and I'll have John Lapper reach out, and, we'll get everything back to Ross for review.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ross?
Right, now it
Mr.
came up
Chairman,
before
the first action item on the agenda is a resolution request to authorize agreement for the Adirondack Hot Air Balloon Festival. This year, there's only one change to the agreement for this year. The VFW has requested an increase in their percentage of the donations for the Balloon Festival. Previously, they collected 10% of the donations, the rest goes to the county. This year, they've asked for an increase to 15%. Otherwise, we expect all the terms of the agreement to be the same.
Okay, Brian, you reviewed it, you're satisfied with?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have not, I got the agenda this morning, I have not reviewed it.
Okay.
What do they do, parking?
Yeah, the VFW collects donations for the vehicles coming into the airport. It's a no-charge event, but these are volunteer donations, and the VFW volunteers go out there on the runway at the gates and collect donations from the spectators and participants at the Balloon Festival. And those monies come to the county.
Specifically for parking of the vehicles?
It's not for parking, it's a voluntary donation thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we just catch the people as they're coming in.
The money goes to help offset the overtime.
Right, right.
Would the committee like, Brian hasn't reviewed this, would you like, is there a timetable that this is critical? Would it be better have Brian review it, report back to us if he sees anything? This is,
Sure, that's fine, there's no urgency to this. The Balloon Festival is the weekend of September 23rd, 24th, and 25th at the airport. So
Okay.
there certainly is time to scrutinize and take a closer look at the previous agreements.
is that okay with the committee? Let Brian review it and report back, and then we'll vote on it next month? Okay.
Okay, moving on, the next action item request is for a resolution to authorize the superintendent of public works to establish an annually recurring Northeast Hot Air RVer parking procedures and rates for the Balloon Festival. This request is to establish a $10 per RV for the entire weekend rate for the RV club that parks down at the south end of the airport up on the hill. And this would continue at the same rate unless modified by the committee at a future date. Previously, historically, the county's never charged for this. It's always been free to them. We're looking to increase our revenue to the airport to help offset our overtime expenses. We figured that a $10 per RV was a very reasonable rate to charge for use of the field, and we would resume providing shuttle service for their club back and forth to the festival grounds from the site.
Okay, any questions? Rachel?
You know, Ross, when you and I took a tour, maybe it was last year or the year before, we specifically talked about the RV club and that there had never been a charge for them being there. And at the time, you were very supportive of the fact that there hadn't been a charge.
That's right.
I guess I'm just wondering, we're increasing a percentage going to the VFW, which is fine, but then at the same point in time, we're now establishing a fee to help offset the overtime costs, when in fact, I thought the whole reason we all try to volunteer, I know I'm there often early hours with other supervisors, is to offset the cost of overtime. I don't know how I feel about the fee, and how do they feel about the fee? I don't know. Has anyone talked to the RV club?
Yes.
And what they said? I'm sorry, I should raise my hand.
We made them aware that we were gonna be pursuing a $10 per RV fee, and they were making their membership aware, and were factoring it into their rates, anticipating a fee.
And then historically, just back when we didn't have any money, I guess we're flush with it now. There was a directive to possibly cover overtime costs, which was in the vicinity of $23,000. So it was suggested that we would charge for parking, and Mr. Donahue vehemently was against that. And then donations, and we had negotiations. Anyways, we did that. We've been successful. We had Realty USA and the VFW on Cooper Street who stepped forward. Since then, the VFW is the only one that does it now. They've been successful doing that. We've instituted a bus charge, which took a couple years to institute. And lastly, looking at revenue sources, the RV park, we thought that would be something executable to raise funds to cover the overtime that exists, even though Rachel and I and others go out to help out. That's the history of it. But if you don't want to charge, go ahead.
Thank you. May I, is there, I assume this doesn't have to happen today, but could you give us some financials on where we're at with the overtime cost? I mean, like you said, you've done the bus charge. We are doing the parking fee with a percentage going to charity. Can we just see a breakdown of all the revenue?
I think you can call Mike Swan, the treasurer's office, and he'll give you any of that.
I think we, after each Balloon Fest, we typically...
I'm sorry, I don't want to speak out of turn.
I'd have to go back and look, because I can't remember how much.
You're not going to get this on tape.
Right. I'm just looking for the offset amount, you know, clearly you can figure out the amount of
We've never covered the full amount, but we've offset it significantly. And mostly 'cause we've had good weather. We haven't had a balloon fest yet since we instituted this where the weather's been bad, that people just didn't show up. That would also offset the VFW's take because they would not have any money to get 15% out. Could we, go ahead?
We typically report to committee after each of the balloon fests on our revenues and what our total expenses are. I can just tell you from when I first came in 2007, the annual expense of the balloon fest to the county, direct expense, was about $35,000 a year. And since then, we've increased revenue. Now we're typically, in recent years, we've been bringing in more than 10,000, probably 10 to 15,000 in revenue. And we've implemented a lot of new fees with the preferred parking area in the front. We've instituted the bus fees for the tour buses as they come in. The VFW, in conjunction with the Balloon Fest, are collecting donations, and then they're passing those to the county. The RV charge was really from a standpoint of fairness. When we looked at the amount of people are paying to park their passengers' vehicles by the terminals, yet they had the RVs up there with their own kind of private area. They kind of maintain themselves. They are low maintenance, which is great. But from a fairness standpoint, we thought it was fair to charge them something for being up there. And we've moved that bubble from a $35,000 loss to something that's in the single-digit thousands loss each year. And so that's what we've done.
Right, Joe?
Just quickly, I guess, look, now being more familiar with all the different committees and occupancy tax, I'm wondering why for, say, the Charlie Wood Park, or I think there's other things where we pay the county for doing paperwork or an administrative cost, or there's some money coming out of occupancy tax directly to the county. If this is, I mean, we give money to the Balloon Festival from occupancy tax. If we're only talking about single digits in terms of a loss, why are we not eligible to have occupancy tax pay that expense?
You can go to the OCC tax committee and ask that, but our directive here was to recoup as much money. We're talking about $1,000 here. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're going to get out of this RV issue for $10.
I just mean in general. I'm sorry, Dan.
I don't have those answers. I'm not on the OCC tax committee. I just know that this was the directive, and Facilities has done this. We've been fairly successful, moving this forward with the buses, the preferred parking, etc.
I can't believe for $10, a lot of people are gonna complain about this. I mean, they're not gonna complain. It is a fairness issue. I think you just ought to move on.
$100,000 RV.
It's 100 RVs?
100 RVs.
Really, I mean, I think it's fair when in the preferred parking, we didn't get any complaints about that, and that fills up, correct?
It's been increasing, and people love it.
Yeah.
Is this
Correct.
resolution on the floor?
Please,
Has it been
do
moved?
we have a motion on the floor to okay
moved.
it, seconded by Evelyn? Any more questions? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request to increase capital project H346. This is the natural gas conversion project. The amount of increase would be $27,000. And the money would come out of the 995910 transfers to capital project. There were several changes during the project to avoid cutting into pavement for utilities during the installation, and the cost will also cover some of the conversions of the buildings themselves. Here on the next page of your packet here, we have a couple tables that show what the cost distribution is for the project. You'll notice there at the bottom that the total reimbursement to the county from Rich Air and DSMI is going to be about $42,000. That combined with the money we've already put into the project will allow us to convert all the buildings except for the firehouse.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor. Evelyn, seconded by Ron. Discussion. Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a resolution request to authorize the chairman of the board to sign offer letters for the runways 12 and 19 approach navigation easement and land acquisition project H339. New York State DOT has completed their review of the fair market value appraisals and the approach to runways 12 and 19 and the amount of just compensation. That letter, you can see right here from New York State DOT, if you add all those numbers together, the amount of just compensation for both runway ends is $460,300. And I'll just move quickly on to the next one. That would also include a grant application to the FAA to include technical support services. This would be a grant application, resolution request for $525,000 to cover the acquisition and the offers for the property owners in runway 12 and 19.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor.
Move 6 and 8,
Si-
the two of them, I guess there's 6
Putting
in
both-
that. Yep, move both of them.
Both on, seconded by Ron, discussion. Claudia?
Thank you. I know I'm coming into this whole airport expansion thing really late in the game, but I mean, whatever this amount was, $480,000 to purchase an extension is a lot of money, and I do not
Yes,
favor.
if I can elaborate on that a little bit more. The grant application is for $525,000. The county share of that would be $25,000. The FAA would pick up the normal 90%, and the state would pick up 5%. So there is a $25,000 local share for that acquisition. And then what I've done here is I put up on the screen a Google Earth which shows you some of the obstructions for the crosswind runway, for the runway 12 and 19 approaches. What we have here is the runway 12 end, and what we're proposing to do is acquire this property off of the end of runway 12, and what that would allow us to do is prevent obstructions to this runway and to control the runway protection zone off of the end of this crosswind runway. This here is Ridge Road. This right here is Dead Man's Curve. You might, a lot of people refer to it as that. So this is the area that we're talking about. A lot of these obstructions in here are on airport property. Some of this area over here, this is the parcel really that we're talking about. Part of the plan is also to construct an emergency access road that will connect Ridge Road to the approach end of this runway as well. That will enable the Glens Falls Fire Department to have rapid access over to this side of the airfield where we currently don't have any access. And it also serve a lot of other miscellaneous benefits having that access road in there as well.
Okay.
But the main purpose is to control and prevent obstructions to the runway here for the runway 12 end. So that's what this is all about. The property owner over here is a willing seller. We've contacted him. We've shared with him the amount of the just compensation for his parcel, and he is very much interested in selling the entire parcel in fee simple. Our initial offer was for a navigation easement. That's always our first approach. We want to go with the least expensive route first, but the property owner insisted that he would only sell the property. He would not grant a navigation easement. That is eligible for funding, and that's where we are today. We've done the environmental assessment for the acquisition and the tree removal, and we are at the phase where we're ready to make purchase offers to the landowners for that property. And that also includes the runway 19 end property over here as well. So there's a parcel right here which part of the runway protection zone goes through as well. This might help. This is another aerial showing the different parcels that are involved. This is the 12 end that we just talked about right here, shaded in orange. And then over here is the 19 end, the Osberg parcel, shaded in yellow. You can see the runway protection zone is this trapezoidal shaped piece of property, or imaginary airspace I should say. And then this is it right here, and it cuts through his parcel right there. So we're potentially acquiring this piece of property as well, this horseshoe shaped piece of parcel in fee simple with a navigation easement over this remaining parcel as well. There's two separate parcels here as well. So that is also shown on the fair market value appraisals and the offer of just compensation. The proposed project would be, again, to acquire this parcel in fee simple. We would own that outright. And this piece here, we would own the horseshoe shaped piece in fee simple, and then have a permanent navigation easement over the smaller piece in the center here.
Okay, any other questions? Claudia?
Would we be acquiring these easements and land even if we weren't doing the expansion of the runway?
That's correct, it has nothing to do with the runway extension.
Thank
The
you.
runway extension is down here at the south end of the airport. This is the parcel that was involved, previously for the runway 1 extension down here, and for
Jeff.
the existing runway.
Jeff?
I just wanna make sure that was clear in the committee, since the expansion word was used a few times, it has nothing to do with that.
That was my.
Okay. Any other questions? Call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Alright, moving on here, this next resolution request is to authorize the chairman of the board to execute a notice of intent letter to establish the lead agency under seeker for the 1,000-foot runway 119 extension project. The notice of intent letters will be sent to all the involved and interested agencies for environmental review of the proposed project. Here on page 10 of your packet is a copy of the draft notice of intent to establish Warren County as lead agency. That continues on to page 11 of your packet. Page 12 of your packet is the draft cover letter that we'll send out to all the involved and interested agencies that's been prepared by CMS Engineers for us. It provides a good summary of what the project entails. Continuing on to page 13. And then on page 14 of your packet, this will be included in with the notice of intent. This is the part 1 of the full environmental assessment form that will be required for the runway 119 extension project. This is the beginning of the seeker process for that project. We're trying to get this started now so that we can kind of combine some of our efforts for the federal side, the NEPA process, the environmental assessment that's currently ongoing. We can kind of tackle some of the same efforts at the same time. First thing we have to do is establish lead agency. So this part 1 of the environmental assessment form, the county is not being asked to make any action or any determination. It is simply project information, background information, and we'll send it out with a notice of intent to establish lead agency. We're requesting authorization for the chairman to execute the part 1 and sign the notice of intent.
Okay, motion get on the floor, Ron, second by John. Discussion? Rachel?
Is there anyone else that could be the lead agent on this, or is that, it always has to be the county?
Sure, I think I can explain that a little bit. Here on the page 15 of your packet, page number 2 of the part 1 of the EAF, right here you'll see we have government approvals under this table. And then down here at the bottom for state agencies, you have New York State DEC, and you have federal agencies, the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Those two agencies have to give us permits or approvals for this project. Those are the only other two agencies that could potentially serve as lead agency, and we're sending them a letter. They are the involved agencies. Everyone else is an interested party.
I think we went through this already with some of this property where the town of Queensbury, one of the board members, tried to become the lead agency, and just what Jeff said was explained, and that it's not for, it's a county or a DEC or a federal function.
Any other questions? Claudia?
If we're authorizing the chairman to sign the EAF, I just wanna make sure that we have gone through this and all agree with what is in here. For instance, on page 4 of the EAF, does the proposed action include new non-residential construction? New non-residential construction, and we have checked no. I disagree with that.
Are you proposing any residential construction, are you?
No residential construction, no. This
Well, I'm
would
not
be
talking about the top
constructing
line, I'm talking.
runway. Yeah, that could be a mistake that needs to be corrected, thank you.
Any other questions? Claudia?
Thanks. So and the next one too, we won't have any impoundment, no storm, I'm not sure if that covers stormwater impoundment areas.
What I could do, if you like, our consultant, our environmental engineers put this together. I have gone through it and checked it. I would have to refer your questions to them and get back to you if you need that to happen.
Would you like to table this? Claudia, is your...
I would just like a little more time,
Mhm.
to
Is
review
that,
it carefully.
how's the committee feel?
Again, this is, there's no action
If
being
you wanna-
taken, we're not asking for any environmental determinations, it's project information, background information. I think we could make those changes and then have the county attorney approve them.
Claudia?
This does not take any action, that's true. However, it does set forth, this is the basis of our environmental review, and it should be as accurate as possible. This is where we start from, this is describing the action, helping get everyone on the same page, because we are sending it out to all the other involved agencies, which I'm not sure there's many, DEC and Corps, maybe DOT. But everyone should be on the same page and have accurate information before we flush this out to the other agencies and say this is what the project is. And these are the impacts that we think are gonna be out there.
Okay, will you review that, and if you have questions, get a hold of Ross, we'll get a hold of the engineering firm and go over?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so a motion to table?
Yes.
Seconded? Rachel? All in favor?
Well, before you do that, can I ask a question?
Opposed?
Opposed to table.
Oh, let me see the opposed hands here. Let me get the vote here first. Six against.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't want to table it, we would like to vote on it?
Yeah, I would prefer, I agree with what Claudia's saying. I don't, however, I think we should move forward with designating ourselves as lead agency here. But I do want to ensure that the completion of this particular form is absolutely correct. So I share that with Claudia, and I would say that as long as we have, it's understood by staff that any supervisor that has an item that is a correction for us, that it be dealt with and be properly incorporated into this part one.
I will, and I will double check that, I know I had a couple revisions I sent off, I may have scanned the wrong copy and I don't know. I'll double check on those and make sure that we have the right information, and I'll make sure we get that to the county attorney's office for their review as well.
Jeff?
I was just gonna suggest just that, and then we can provide the committee an update on anything that was modified, post-committee.
Greg?
This is a resolution authorizing that we become the lead, correct? That's it? Okay.
Can I?
In doing so, we send out this form to the other agencies.
Yeah, well, part one.
Okay.
Chairman?
Can I just suggest that maybe we reconvene this part of the airport committee in 2 weeks' time? I mean, is it time sensitive? Does it need to get on the board agenda for May? Full board? Or is this just something that can be done procedurally in 2 weeks? Just reconvene the committee in 2 weeks after all the questions have been answered, and then, move ahead, but just reconvene the committee and make sure all the answers before you send out any notices to the property owners. I mean, I don't see the harm in that. You're gonna move ahead, but
Yeah,
just
we can have
make
that
the
done by
corrections.
the next board meeting.
John?
Sure.
Well, it's just that this is to set lead agency, and part one can be altered, and right up until you do part two. And if there's any inaccuracies in part one at the time you do part two, that's a problem. So those inaccuracies that might exist in part one can be altered, and they should be altered, so that they're entirely accurate when you get to the point of doing part two.
Yeah. I know I'm sorry, I attached the wrong one, so there's another, I scanned the wrong one into your packet, I definitely did, because this one here is supposed to be checked yes too. Yeah. Let me send out the correct packet. That's my mistake, I apologize.
Okay, so what does the committee want to do? Do you want to hold off on this, or you want to vote to be lead agency, and review the document before it goes out, et cetera?
Hold on, maybe Could I ask Brian?
Brian.
What, our, designating ourselves as lead agency and the connection between part one and designating.
But I think the difference is, at this point, we can designate, you can recommend to the full board that you become lead agency, and then we can ensure that the paperwork is in proper form before the resolution is adopted, and it would certainly have to be in a form that my office would approve anyway, and, I would share that with anyone before, it goes out, before I approve it for the chairman to sign.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's call the question. All in favor?
Voted, you usually allow the public to go ahead and comment. Is this a new, policy?
Excuse me, the chair hasn't recognized you. I'll recognize you when it's time. Could you please be seated?
It won't do me any good after the vote.
Could you please be seated, sir?
I
The chair
will.
has not recognized you. Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
So moved. Okay, next.
Next item on the agenda is a request for a new contract. The purpose of the contract would be for a 3-year lease for the outer fields at the airport to harvest hay and any other approved agricultural uses. We don't have a contractor yet. The intent is to put out an RFP here very soon that will be used to select the best value lease agreement to be determined by the superintendent of public works. Of course, in a form to be approved by the county attorney. The hope is that we can get a contract in place in some of these outer fields. We can then have one of our local agricultural businesses or farmers use for hay crop harvesting. It'll lessen some of the burden on the airport staff for mowing, and if we can, maybe we can make a few dollars at it at the same time.
Questions?
Hope
Evan?
for
I'd like to make a
revenue.
motion to go forward with it. I think it's an innovative idea, and I kinda like it, so.
We have a second. Ron? Discussion. Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Right,
In the interest of time, Ross, is there anything we can skip here to?
Real quickly, we've got a request from New York State to provide a site for a Mesonet, an early weather warning detection system. This is the weather network that the governor has proposed for New York State. Will consist of 125 service weather stations. We picked out a potential site at the airport. We think it would work well. They're requesting a no-cost 30-year lease to put one of these weather stations out at the airport. It would be a solar-powered weather station, and I guess what I would propose is that the committee consider setting a public hearing date for a long-term lease, a 30-year lease for the State University of Albany to install one of these weather stations out at the airport.
Okay, anyone want to put it on the floor? John, second. Ron, discussion. Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then, real quick, again, another suggestion for a referral to the Personnel Committee. I had a request from a teacher at Glens Falls High School. They have some students that would like to do an internship program. One student in particular would like to do an internship program at the airport. Currently, the county has a resolution that authorizes the chairman to establish internships for colleges and universities, but specifically does not include high school students. This program here is a registered program through the New York State Department of Education, the Career and Technical Education Work-Based Learning Programs. And I would suggest that perhaps the committee would consider referring this to the Personnel Committee for their consideration to include students participating in one of these programs for internships with the county.
Okay, could we have a motion to refer Evelyn, second by Rachel? Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Rachel, do you want anything on the Airport Advisory Committee? Any updates or anything? And Travis, public comment?
Well, I guess I had one issue now, three. The first one I would like to ask is this a new policy where the public is not permitted to express their questions or concerns prior to a vote for this committee? I mean, it seems subcommittees in general, for as long as I've been around, that privilege is extended prior to a vote to hear from
the public. It doesn't do me much good now at this
The
point.
answer to
after-
your question, I think, is it's my prerogative, and I think I've been very liberal with you as opposed to other taxpayers, et cetera. And I think today didn't warrant that, but you have your time to speak now, so please do.
So I have two other issues. One I wanted to mention in regards to the Skimmerhorn leases. First of all, I'm in favor of everything he was proposing here, but I did want to mention that in reviewing some minutes of at least 5 years ago, I think it goes back, there was some discussion on the lease rates and such, and they were actually being set at that time for ESMI, and they were set at less than the nominal rate at that point in time. Mr. Skimmerhorn actually mentioned they were less than his rates that he was paying. My request is that since this information is going to be coming up to you again, and it was mentioned that you're going to talk about these ground leases, my request is that you talk about all of the ground leases that are currently out there, including the one for ESMI, Environmental Soil Management, who have this hangar out there which they call the toy box, and I would like to see whether they're paying the proper rates as well for their ground lease. And the other issue that I had to talk about was the one that you just voted on. What you just voted on is to allow the fox to guard the hen house, in my opinion. This may not work out well. It did not work out well the last time it was done, when we cleared the 30 acres there about 2 years ago. There was a permit issued at that time from by the DEC. It's about a 5-sentence permit, and I'm going to read one of the 5 sentences. It says, an undisturbed vegetative buffer will remain along the edge of Queensberry Avenue to provide a visual screen. That's 1/5 of the entire permit, and that was not done. I mean, that area was clear-cut. It was then found, I guess, it was better to ask forgiveness than for permission. It was clear-cut, and they went ahead and put in some ornamental type trees along that line now, which in 20 years might provide that screening. But it was in direct violation of the permit, and I don't think that Warren County should be allowed to be the lead agency when they do things like that. In addition, this is the extension that we're talking about. This is Runway 1, and there is a critical environmental area at the end of that. It's called the Marl Fen. They're talking about disturbing over 1 acre of Marl Fen there. That's 1 acre of 10 in the world. It is rated S1 for state most sensitive, G1 for global most sensitive. It is designated a critical environmental area. The work is going to be within feet of it. There's been no mapping of any underground sources for this water. The Marl Fen is fed from miles and miles around with highly mineralized water. We don't know where it's coming from. We do know that groundwater is a problem getting into this. They're certainly going to be changing the grading and such in this area. They're talking about putting an impermeable runway right next to it, which is going to shed water, and which they're also going to go ahead and put chemicals on during the year for treating for ice and such. I have a concern that if proper diligence is not given, that we run into a similar situation where, oh shucks, I guess we missed that, and there goes 10% of the world's Marl Fen.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Mr. Austin?
I've given this talk to the full board, to committees here. Many years, I'm a former airport manager, past president of the New York Airport Managers Association, now Management Association. Years ago, we got a requirement from the federal government to put a perimeter fence around the airport. It consisted of a 3 barbed wire fence back then. We did. I got a letter from some young lady at some kind of outfit in Troy that said, you cannot put that there, it's a Marl Fen. I mentioned that. 3 old-timers immediately came to me, totally independently, laughing their heads off. That Marl Fen is where the topsoil was taken for the Queensbury School that was built in the early fifties, 'cause it was free, 'cause it was on county land. And they also took topsoil for this building here, when they built this, because it was free, it was on county land, and topsoil was expensive. That is the Marl Fen, so-called, one of 10 in the world. My comment to one of the guys that was upset about it said, well, why don't we take more topsoil, maybe we can have 20% of the world's Marl Fen. Marl is clay, fen means a swamp. Yes, it's different, because there's no topsoil there, like all around it. So the water comes, it goes into that blue marine clay, and it has its own little type of vegetation. So when I hear people saying we shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that because of the Marl Fen, for the third time I'd like to enter it in the records that the old timers will tell you, they're long since gone, I could give you some of their names, but that is what is the Marl Fen that everybody raises such hell about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Evelyn, seconded by Ron. All in favor? Aye. So moved.